Why is Shane Waldron so highly regarded as an offensive mind? We break that down next on the Unbearable Sports Podcast.
We're going to take the North and never give it back.
So that's a good pick. You get the corner. I got to go bold, right? I got to go bold for this.
Yeah, she's got some nice long
Welcome
hair,
back
and
to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Barron. Make sure to like and subscribe out there on YouTube. Also, rate the show 5 stars everywhere that you get your podcasts, especially Apple Podcasts, because if you do, you are in the running for a Darnell Wright jersey that we will announce live on the show once we reach the magical number of 58 5-star reviews. Also, just a reminder, tomorrow we will be live on YouTube at 7:30, and we're going to be breaking down our award show. And that, to me, is one of my favorite shows. If you haven't been a part of it, you should. It's super fun. We get to break down like our favorite players and all these other fun, goofy awards that I have out there, and I hope to see you there. But let's get right into it, shall we? Let's break down Shane Waldron. Now, on Wednesday, we talked about some of the top offensive coordinator candidates for the Chicago Bears, and then after that, the Bears requested to interview Shane Waldron. And Shane Waldron, we're really just going to break this down, right? Former offensive coordinator for the Seahawks is looking for a job because the entire Seattle staff is out of a job right now. And also, Shane Waldron is really kind of credited for getting the most out of Geno Smith over at Seattle. And let's look a little bit more into his overall coaching tree and where he's kind of come from. So if you look at this, from 05 to 07, he was over at Notre Dame as a graduate assistant. Then in 08, went over to the New England Patriots as an offensive quality control coach. And then over in 09, New England Patriots was a tight ends coach. In 2010, moved over to the Hartford Colonials and was a wide receivers coach over there. Then in 2011, went over to Buckingham, Brownie, and Nichols in Massachusetts as their offensive coordinator, and then moved over just to Massachusetts in 2012 to 2013 as their tight ends coach, then moved over from 2014 to 2015, still at Massachusetts as their O-line coach. Then went back to the NFL in 2016 with the Washington Redskins back in the day as their offensive quality control person. And then in 2017, went over to the Rams as their tight ends coach. And then in 2018 to 2020 was their passing game coordinator and also was a quarterbacks coach in there as well. But then went over to the Seattle Seahawks 2021 to 2023 as their offensive coordinator. So he is a disciple of the Sean McVay tree because of that time over with the Rams, and he was really highly sought after, and that's why he moved over to the Seahawks. And you see, I think something that really stands out is his experience at the different positional levels. He's basically done it all besides being a running backs coach. He's done tight ends, wide receivers, offensive line. I didn't have this on the graphic, but he was a quarterbacks coach for the Rams as well. So he's really done it all, and you really see it in his resume and just how he calls plays. He's really focused on the passing game. Now, if we look over at the actual stats from him being a coach, now in 2021, the Seattle offense wasn't great, was ranked 20th in yards his first season. They hardly threw the ball, 31st in attempts and 27th in attempts for rushing offense. They just didn't move the football too much. But in 2022, they were the 13th highest yards for an offense. And you look at that, the passing offense was 11th in yards, 4th in touchdowns for that passing offense. And then last year in 2023, a slight regression, 21st in yards overall and 28th in rushing offense. So didn't do too great. But before that, it was 11th and 18th. And then 28th. So really some regression there. And passing offense, 14th. Now, if you're looking at the stats, you might go, "What? I thought this guy was supposed to be good." Right? Because if you look at these stats, you go, that's not great. That's not like getting you super amped up. So why is he so highly sought after? Because he really is highly sought after as a coach. Now, I mentioned this, Geno Smith. Right? Geno Smith, he's kind of credited for getting the most out of Geno Smith. And I remember last year. And was it last year or 2 years ago that everyone thought that the Seattle Seahawks were done for? And then the offense starts to show a little bit of life. And the reason why is that Shane Waldron, he's only 44 years old, but he is known as a master play designer. That is kind of his calling card. And really, when you look at it, just kind of the play calling and play design is very, very special with him. So this is an advanced metric that was pulled together by Peyton Analytics. And if you see this, he was ranking the offensive play callers at the end of the year, and he calls it personnel and market efficiency with team constraints, right? So the higher up you are, the better of a play caller you are in layman's terms, right? Shane Waldron was 10th on the list, and Luke Getsy 27th. so if you're questioning the validity, Luke Getsy 27th best play caller from these metrics. But something that I really do want to call out, you might, for those that are listening, you might go 10th. Why 10th? That's not great. But when you look at the people ahead of him, there's only 2 offensive coordinators that are ahead of him, and that's Press Taylor for the Jaguars and Ben Johnson of the Lions, which we already know is going to be the hottest offensive coordinator in essentially coach free agency this year. Like, he's going to get a head coaching gig. But you look at the other people ahead of him, Mike McDaniel, Matt LaFleur, Shane Steichen, Kyle Shanahan, Mike McCarthy, Kevin O'Connell, and Sean McVay. And also, just for the record, right below him, Eric Bieniemy, Kellen Moore, and Todd Monken, all people that people have said, well, maybe the Bears will take a look at him. So the advanced metrics will show that he is a good play call, play designer. Now, besides the numbers, what can we get excited about with this? Now, I have a lot of other metrics that we can point to that really kind of back this up, but I watched, it was from this YouTube channel, I think it's called Scheme, and you can search for it. It's really, really cool, but I just grabbed a couple screen grabs because I didn't want to grab their video recording. But they showed this play design, and for those that are listening, I'll try to describe it. So basically, you have your quarterback in a shotgun formation. The running back is right behind him, right? And then to the right of him, I believe it's a tight end and maybe like a fullback or another running back. And it's this weird formation that they will run, I think a couple times each game. And it's just a different design that throws people off. And in that, they'll throw in different wrinkles to just get people on their toes. And we saw this over and over again last year with the Seahawks. Now, this is just a small portion of plays, but it just shows the ingenuity that he has as a play designer and a play caller. When us as Bears fans, we see Luke Getsy and we go, what the heck are you trying to do with a lot of these play designs and play calls? And something also, it's just the differences in how he calls these plays and how he designs these plays. So right in front of me, you have the quarterback under center, and then you have the running back slightly off to the left rather than directly behind him. Just kind of throws people off. And also in this play, I believe they send the wide receiver in motion as kind of a distraction. And when you watch the tape of what a Shane Waldron designs, there's a lot of plays with purpose is the way that I would define it. Like, the plays actually have a reason where you go, okay, you're trying to set this up so that we get, like when he designs a screen, it's made with purpose. It's made with, okay, we're moving people around. We're shifting people here and there. And then we're going to have this guy open over here. And that's something that Luke Getsy never did. And Shane Waldron is doing that. And he also has the ability to actually design these plays and kind of add some trickeration. And just someone that can come up with stuff like that is special, is worth being tried out for this. And also another reason, I didn't mention this with who is he? Another big plus for him, mainly from the Bears offensive coordinator perspective, is that since the Seattle coaching staff is essentially disbanded, he already knows who he's going to be bringing over. He's going to be bringing over the Seattle coaching staff because he's used to them. Or he might bring in a couple other McVay disciples to then bring in to his overall system. But really, the big piece is his advanced play design, which we haven't had for the Bears. Us Chicago Bears, we love to hire people that don't know how to call plays or haven't called plays for very long. That's our calling card. So if we hire this guy, it's going to be very, very different. But let's continue going on about advanced metrics because we showed it before, right? When you look at it at face value with just the basic metrics, you go, that's nothing that's too crazy, right? Like, it's middle of the road offenses. Why should we be amped up about this offensive mind? Well, when you look at the advanced metrics for just him as a play caller, him as an offensive coordinator. So throughout his time, so 2020 to 2023, they ranked 6th in yards per play at 5.5. Also expected EPA per play, 12th at 0.016, success rate 44.4% at 13th, and scoring drive starting field position on their own 40 and in 35.8, which is 8th. And then touchdown drive rate 12th, series conversion rate is 11th. So when you look at these metrics, right, it's not going to blow you away, but you do see that yards per play pretty good with 6 overall. And those numbers are from PFF_Brad. He tweeted this out. He's an amazing follow, whether you're a Bears fan or he's the most knowledgeable guy out there from a salary cap perspective. So strongly suggest dropping him a follow. But let's continue going through, right? So another piece is the passing. His passing, like we said, he's had the quarterback coach gigs, the wide receiver coach gigs, all those pieces. And when you look at the same numbers from 2020 to 2023, deep passing rate is 14.3, which is the 3rd highest. Explosive pass play rate is 9th. Pass rate is 9th. So he's trying to pass it a lot, right? As in a league where we just saw CJ Stroud absolutely cook the Browns, we want a passer. We want someone who is not afraid to pass it, and that's what he does. 9th highest pass rate, but also one of my favorite stats that I pulled was he uses motion a lot. In a lot of his play designs, he leverages this a lot. And when you see it, 5th most use of motion. The people that were ahead of him, Vikings, Lions, Browns, and Falcons. And for those that love Miami, Miami was 6th. So you really see some of the top offenses use a lot of motion. And it's kind of that McVay type of approach. The more motion you use, the more confusion it creates. But besides that, though, EPA per drop back during that time, 14th. His RPO rate was 12th, and also play action rate was 14th. So really kind of middle of the road with some of those pieces, but you see that he's also trying to get some of those big plays out there, which I can definitely like. And also, too, we talk about the QB whisperer. Who was his quarterback at that time? Geno Smith. How much has Geno Smith played and how well has he been? How good has he been? He wasn't good until he had Shane Waldron as his offensive coordinator. But let's continue a little bit further and talk about the running scheme that he runs, because we don't want to change our running scheme too much. Now, I know that we say that we're a lot of outside zone. We didn't necessarily run too much outside zone as much as we expected. But if we look over at the running game and the running stats, he has the 8th highest EPA per rush during 2020 to 2023. So 8th, basically most efficient running attack. So even though he knows how to pass it, the running game still works. And he runs the 5th most outside zone at a 36% clip and the 13th most inside zone at 25%. So what that tells me a lot is the Bears want to have a more zone type of blocking system. And that we know that because the Chiefs were a big zone scheme. Also, we know that when you have someone like a Braxton Jones and even like a Darnell Wright, very nimble, Darnell Wright's huge, but you have a slightly quicker and faster blockers, which are great for that zone system. So I think the running system is also a big time fit. But next, let's talk about something that I was very impressed with when I was looking at some of these stats, and this was for last year. So in 2023, Their offensive line, they had those 2 rookie tackles 2 years ago, and last year you expected them to get better. But their offensive line really did struggle because they were plagued with a whole bunch of injuries. And really, it was tough for them to get things going. Now, when you look at the Bears, what would the Bears do in this situation? They'd throw deep passes, right? Because when you looked at the stats of Seattle's offensive line, they had the 4th worst pass blocking efficiency. So 229 pressures on 635 passes. They also had a 24.4% pressure rate. And just for perspective, the Bears had a 23.9% pressure rate. So they had a worse pressure rate than we did. So what happened too? Also, Sharp Analytics had the Seahawks as the 25th best offensive line, and then PFF had them as the 28th. And for perspective, Bears were 16th and 19th in those respective rankings. So what did he do? He sped up the time in pocket. They had the 9th quickest time in the pocket at 2.4 seconds. And if you're curious, Bears, we were last, right? We know darn well why we were last, but we were last. It's just for anyone that was curious out there. But also, too, they had the 5th shortest intended air yards, which is crazy to think about when they also had the 3rd highest deep passing rate throughout Shane Waldron's time out there as well. And they had the 9th highest explosive pass rate. I think it really does show that, hey, this offensive line was not going to be getting going. So what did they do? He changed things up. He tried to get more short yards, tried to get quicker things out there. And I love it, right? It shows that he can at least change and do things that not just this is how the offense is and that's it, period. So switching things up, being imaginative, that's stuff that I think that I want in an offensive coordinator. And I think that's why he's a very impressive prospect from an offensive coordinator perspective. But to wrap things up, we have to talk about what's the catch, right? Why is he not a perfect prospect at it, right? Because there's not going to be a perfect offensive coordinator prospect because they would be going for head coaching gigs. Now, if you asked a Seattle Seahawks fan to describe him and say, what don't you like about him? There have been struggles on 3rd down. They had the 23rd rated. They were 23rd lowest on 3rd down at a 38.5% clip. That's not great, but he's phenomenal at 1st and 2nd down. Why? I don't know. So it just kind of shows some of those designs. But also red zone had some issues, 51.5% touchdown rate, which ranks 26 over his time as an offensive coordinator, but also just some simple kind of just headlines about him as an offensive coordinator. Believe it or not, he calls screens at the wrong time. There's been a lot of complaints from Seattle fans that he calls way too many screens. So there's little hints of Getsy out there, if you do say so, right? Does that change your mind on him? He calls screens at the wrong time. But when he does run a screen, it does have some sort of a purpose to it. But also tends to struggle after those scripted plays. I also am curious how many offensive minds do struggle post that, right? But then also 2023 didn't necessarily live up to a lot of the expectations of the Seattle fan base because they looked at it and said, we have Tyler Lockett, we have DK Metcalf, we have Jackson Smith and Jigba, and we expect something to happen on this offense, a little bit more passing, and we also have Zach Charbonnet, a 2nd-round running back. We should get more production. So that's where at least the fan base, and you look at some of the storylines of him, that's some of the negatives of him. Now, let me know down below in the comments, did that just scare you off? Or do you go, all right, you know what, maybe we can still win with him. Maybe he's still going to be good. Because overall, what I like about him, he has multiple years of play calling experience. And a lot of the advanced metrics really do like him as a play caller and a play designer. And also, he can easily bring over a full coaching staff. So to me, this makes him a very, very high candidate. To me, number 1 on my current list right now. But also, there's just the concerns. And I think a lot of it, I'm not trying to completely dismiss it, but it seems like those concerns are a lot about what other A lot of other offensive coordinators have those same concerns when they get brought over. Yet again, that's why he's not a head coaching candidate, because if he was always top 10, he'd be the Ben Johnson that would be getting those head coaching gigs. So to me, I really like it. I hope the interview goes well because to me, he's one of my top candidates out there. But if you like this breakdown, make sure to like and subscribe for some more. And like I said, we have a live show tomorrow that we're going to be breaking everything down. So make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, and rate 5 stars everywhere that you get your podcast. And with that, Unbearable Sports Podcast, we are out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair, and you know that she's a bad